It was spring of 2021, and I was 24 years old, living away from my family while studying at an out-of-state college. My school had an early spring break that year, which gave me the perfect chance to drive home and visit everyone. The trip was long, about 2 days on the road, but I had always preferred driving over flying. Something about the control, the silence of the road, the way the world peeled past the windshield. I set out early on a Tuesday morning, earlier than I had planned, which meant I was making excellent time. My route wasn't carefully mapped. I had only a general sense of where I'd stop for the night, but for the first day, I just kept pushing through. 10 hours of asphalt, gas stations, and fast food later, I finally admitted I needed to rest. It was about 8 in the evening. At the next gas station, I pulled up a map and searched for a hotel. The area I was in felt like the middle of nowhere, but I figured there had to be something within 20 or 30 minutes. Surprisingly, I found one closer than expected. The directions instructed me to leave the highway and take a smaller road that stretched behind the gas station. That road was old, cracked, and poorly lit. The street lamps that did exist glowed weakly, barely illuminating the pavement. There were no other cars. After 5 minutes of driving, I passed through a small, old-fashioned town, the kind that looks like time left it behind decades ago. At the end of the main street stood the hotel. It was a small, faded building with weathered siding and a parking lot that was completely empty. I parked, grabbed my bag, and walked inside. The moment I entered, I noticed the strange atmosphere. The lights were dim. Not just low, but unnaturally dim, like someone had deliberately chosen bulbs that cast as little brightness as possible. The lobby was silent. No TVs, no hum of conversation, not even the muffled sound of a guest upstairs. It felt deserted. For a minute, I thought nobody worked there at all. Then, from a hallway behind the counter, a woman appeared. She looked startled to see me, almost like she hadn't expected anyone to show up that night. After a quick recovery, she greeted me and checked me in. She gave me a room at the very end of the hallway, handed me a key, and returned to whatever she had been doing in the back. The hallway was narrow, with walls that seemed to breathe old air. I walked to the end, unlocked the door, and entered. The room was small, plainly furnished, and a little musty. I wasn't surprised. It looked like the kind of family-run place that had been around for decades. I dropped my bag, sat on the small sofa, and scrolled through my phone. Eventually, I drifted off to sleep right there, the glow of the screen fading against my closed eyes. The sound that woke me was sharp and sudden. Someone was banging on my door. I jolted upright, heart racing. The clock on the wall said it was 11 p.m. My head spun as I stumbled toward the door and opened it. The hallway was empty. I leaned out, scanning both directions, waiting for someone to return or laugh at the prank. Nothing. The silence pressed against my ears. I lingered for 30 seconds, confused, but the building remained still. I told myself it must have been someone knocking on another door, maybe the sound echoing strangely. Yet I hadn't heard anyone else in the hotel at all. The parking lot had been empty. The hallways were quiet. I returned inside, unsettled. I tried to brush it off. I took a shower, changed into bedclothes, and set an alarm for the morning. I needed sleep if I was going to drive another long stretch the next day. But around the middle of the night, the banging came again. Louder this time, urgent. I sat up, wide-eyed, the darkness thick around me. Only a narrow strip of hallway light seeped under the door. I rushed over, unlocked it, and yanked it open. Again, nothing. The hallway stretched silent and empty. Now uneasy, I decided to ask the receptionist if she'd seen anyone. I walked down the hall and into the lobby, which looked exactly as it had when I arrived. Dim, quiet, unchanged. The woman was still at the desk. I told her someone had been banging on my door. She frowned, confused, then she said something that made my stomach twist. I was the only guest staying that night. I froze. She wasn't joking. She repeated it,
insisting I was the only one checked in. I forced a smile, thanked her, and walked back to my room, though the unease crawled deeper under my skin. If I was the only guest, then who had knocked? Back in my room, I locked every lock, deadbolt, chain, latch. I sat on the bed, staring at the ceiling in the dark. I couldn't relax. My mind spun through possibilities, a mistake, a prank, a sound I misheard. I finally reached for my phone on the nightstand, hoping distraction would help. When the screen lit up, it cast a weak glow across the room. That's when I saw it. In the far corner, by the bed, someone was standing. The figure was motionless, silent, their outline barely visible in the dim light. But they were there, watching me. My chest tightened, my heart thundered. I scrambled toward the door, ripping at the locks with shaking hands. Then the footsteps started. Heavy, rushing footsteps. They thundered across the floor behind me, closing the gap with terrifying speed. I wrenched the final lock, threw the door open, and bolted into the hallway. My feet pounded the carpet as I sprinted toward the lobby. The receptionist jumped when she saw me, but her eyes darted past me. The figure had followed. He burst into the lobby, his footsteps echoing like a predator's. The woman snatched the phone and dialed 911. But as soon as he reached the threshold, he stopped. Without a word, he spun and sprinted out the front door, vanishing into the night. No car waited for him, no footsteps on the pavement, just the empty dark swallowing him whole.
The receptionist, pale and shaking, told me she had no idea who he was. He wasn't supposed to be there. I was, in fact, the only guest. When the police arrived, they confirmed the hotel only had 2 cameras, one outside and one in the lobby. Neither showed anything useful. They did, however, confirm one chilling detail. While I had been at the desk earlier asking about the knocking, the man had slipped into my room. That explained why he was already inside, waiting. What it didn't explain was why. The police finished their report quickly. They searched the area but found nothing. No car, no footprints, no sign of the man anywhere. The receptionist kept shaking her head, repeating that she didn't know him, that she couldn't understand how he'd gotten in. I gathered my belongings and left that night, unable to spend another second in that place. I drove until exhaustion forced me to pull over at a rest stop hours away. Even now, years later, the memory haunts me. I don't know who that man was. I don't know what he wanted. I don't know why he stood silently in the corner instead of attacking outright. The questions have no answers. But one detail lingers in my mind more than anything else. When the police reviewed the lobby footage, they showed the receptionist the tape of me entering the hallway earlier that night. She stared at the screen, and for a moment, her face went pale. The camera showed only me entering the hallway, not the man. To this day, I wonder what that means. Did the camera fail to catch him, or was he never supposed to be visible at all? All I know is this: I'll never forget the feeling of seeing him standing silently in that corner, watching. And I'll never forget the sound of his footsteps rushing closer as I fumbled with the locks. Some experiences are terrifying because of what happens. Others are terrifying because of what you'll never be able to explain. This was both.